Deep within the manor, there was a training ground, with rows of pavilions standing on either side. Boom, 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 led by Kuzhong. As Duan Ling Tian approached the training ground, he heard a series of thunderous roars coming from inside. Upon closer inspection, he saw two young men, both around 35 years old. Sparring, the two fought evenly, making it difficult to determine a winner. Two void-prying stage second-level cultivators. Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed at the two young men in the distance. His spiritual energy immediately detected their cultivation levels. They are the two void-prying stage disciples our would peak recently recruited. Kuzheng told Duan Ling Tian. You are the third. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Even if Kuzheng hadn't said anything, he could have roughly guessed their identities. Kuzheng. Just then, from a pavilion on one side of the training ground, an elderly figure swiftly darted out, appearing before Duan Ling Tian and the others like a gust of wind. It was a one-armed old man. The old man's eyes gleamed with sharp light, and a profound and unfathomable aura subtly emanated from him, clearly indicating he was a powerful existence. Another void transformation stage expert. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, thinking to himself, Senior brother. Facing the one-armed old man, Kuzheng respectfully bowed, not daring to be negligent. Senior uncle. Shen Wei followed suit and bowed. How was the harvest this time? The one-armed old man asked with some anticipation. Throughout, he hadn't even glanced at Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian. Perhaps, in his opinion, these two could not meet the conditions for the 5-element sect's large-scale recruitment this time. Although, the 5-element sect's large-scale recruitment this time only had two conditions. If these two conditions were separated, they would be nothing, and many people would meet them. However, combined, they were quite stringent. Under 40 years old, void-prying stage martial artist. Even within the 5-element sect, there were only about 100 void-prying stage disciples under 40 years old. Even if evenly distributed among the 5 peaks, each peak would only have about 20 people. Senior brother. This is Duan Ling Tian, the disciple I dared to recruit for our wood peak. And this little girl beside him will also be a disciple of our wood peak in the future. Kuzheng smiled as he introduced Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian to the one-armed old man. The one-armed old man frowned, sizing up Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian for a moment, only assuming that they were taken into wood peak by Kuzheng because of their high talent. Senior uncle. Don't underestimate brother Ling Tian just because he's young. With his strength, he could defeat those two junior brothers together in a single move. Shen Wei said, looking at the two young men who had just stopped fighting in the distance. His voice was intentionally raised, clearly reaching their ears. Sure enough, as soon as Shen Wei finished speaking, the two young men walked over with gloomy expressions. The one-armed old man heard Shen Wei's words and looked at Duan Ling Tian with slight surprise, but he didn't say much. Instead, he waited with interest for the two young men to arrive. Senior brother Shen, we admit we're not as good as you, but you can't insult us like this. The two disciples, who had recently joined the wood peak of the 5-element sect, quickly walked over. With stern faces, they looked at Duan Ling Tian. Defeat the two of us together in a single move? Exactly. What makes him so special? The two wood peak disciples were very angry, looking at Duan Ling Tian with provocative expressions. My brother Duan is much more powerful than you two. Yi Xian snorted, saying impolitely, whether he's more powerful than us, we'll only know after trying. What do you two elders think? One of the wood peak disciples said, then looked at Kuzheng and the one-armed old man with inquiring eyes. Seeing the two old men nod slightly, a mischievous smile appeared on his face. Immediately after, he looked at Duan Ling Tian and sneered. Kid, we don't even need to team up. I alone, with one hand, am enough to defeat you. Is that so? Duan Ling Tian also smiled. A calm and indifferent smile. He could tell that Shen Wei had instigated this, and Kuzheng had tacitly approved it, undoubtedly wanting the one-armed old man to witness his strength. So, he cooperated with them. Talk about it after you can beat my brother Duan. Otherwise, you're just bragging. Yi Xian made a face at the wood-peaked disciple who was provoking Duan Ling Tian, saying childishly, "Little girl, then I'll show you right now how your so-called brother Duan is defeated by my one hand." The wood-peaked disciple showed a mischievous smile, raising his hand as he spoke. However, before he could finish his sentence, he felt a powerful force rushing towards him. Before he could react to what was happening, the immense force had already landed on his body. Boom. The next moment, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, his blood and chi surged, and he flew out like an arrow from a bowstring. After a moment of disorientation, he heavily crashed to the ground. Good. The one-armed old man stared at Duan Ling Tian with gleaming eyes. Duan Ling Tian's speed of attack just now surprised even him. "Little fellow, your strength should be even greater than Shen Wei's, right? It's all right. I can just send him flying with one palm." Duan Ling Tian said indifferently. He remembered that Shen Wei had deliberately set him up earlier. So he showed no mercy when answering the one-armed old man now. The one-armed old man was startled, then looked at Shen Wei. When he saw Shen Wei nod with a bitter smile, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Good, good. Senior brother, Duan Ling Tian is entrusted to you. And this girl, I have already promised Duan Ling Tian that she will also join our wood peak." Ku Zheng respectfully told the one-armed old man, then greeted Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian before turning and leaving with Shen Wei. His entire movement was fluid and elegant. "Your name is Duan Ling Tian." The one-armed old man looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked, completely devoid of his previous disdain, "How should I address you, elder?" Duan Ling Tian nodded. "You can just call me Elder Yang. Come, I'll arrange your living quarters." The one-armed old man enthusiastically led Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian towards the row of pavilions on one side of the training ground to arrange their accommodation. He attacked just now, and you couldn't react at all. The other would peak disciple, helping up the one who had been easily sent flying by Duan Ling Tian, asked with a look of horror. "No." The latter gritted his teeth and stood up, his face showing not only a bitter smile, but also a hint of solemnity. The appearance of such a young expert in wood peak must be reported to Elder Tang as soon as possible. "You're injured, go back and rest first. I'll personally go notify Elder Tang about this." I never expected that a weak wood peak could find such an outstanding young expert. The former took a deep breath, his expression incredibly solemn. All right. Immediately after, the injured wood peak disciple returned to his pavilion to rest, while the other walked out, leaving the wood peak's stronghold in Inding City. All of this was seen by the one-armed old man. The old man coldly snorted. "It's just as I expected. Elder Tang, Earth Peak, you're going too far." As he muttered, two cold lights shot from the old man's eyes, and his robes billowed without wind, emitting a vast and powerful aura. Interesting. Above the pavilion, Duan Ling Tian stood on the balcony, looking at the one-armed old man who had landed. A smile played on the corner of his lips that he had noticed the movements of the two would peak disciples earlier, but he never expected that those two were actually traitors. If Elder Ku were still here and knew that the two he brought back were traitors, what kind of expression would he have? Unconsciously, a profound smile appeared on Duan Ling Tian's face that as for the origin of the two traitors. He could easily guess that they must have come from the Water Peak, Fire Peak, or Earth Peak of the Five Element sect. It's getting more and more interesting. After shaking his head with a smile, Duan Ling Tian returned to his room, cultivating while comprehending intent in Ding City. On the other side, outside the high walls of a vast manor, a swift figure flew in, quickly heading deep into the manor, finally stopping in a lush green backyard to eye in the center of the backyard. There was a pavilion where an old man was playing chess. The old man held white pieces in his left hand and black pieces in his right, playing chess by himself, thoroughly enjoying it. Elder Tang, the uninvited guest, appeared, came before the pavilion, and respectfully bowed to the old man. The old man seemed not at all surprised by the sudden appearance of the newcomer. He continued playing chess while indifferently asking, "What's the situation?" "Yes." The newcomer responded, then added, "Today, Ku Zheng brought someone back." "Oh, so that Ku Zheng really found a void-prying stage martial artist under 40 years old outside." Only then did the old man show a hint of surprise. but he continued to play chess, his emotions seemingly undisturbed. Yes, it's a young man who looks to be at most 25 years old. The newcomer responded again, his tone solemn. 25 years old. The old man finally put down his chess piece, looked at the newcomer, and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure he's a void-prying stage martial artist?" A void-prying stage martial artist around 25 years old, even in our five-element sect's gold peak, is a rare martial arts prodigy seen only once in 100 years. The newcomer nodded, saying with some apprehension, Chai Kuan attacked him, and before he could even react, he was sent flying. Also, Shinwei admits he's not as strong as him. What? Finally, the old man's expression changed drastically. He abruptly stood up, his gaze sharp as he stared at the newcomer. Did he fight with Shinwei? No. The newcomer shook his head. As the old man breathed a sigh of relief, he added, but when he told Yang Ling that he could send Shinwei flying with one palm, judging by Shinwei's expression, it seemed. It was true. Send Shinwei flying with one palm. The old man's pupils constricted, and he murmured, then his strength must be at void-prying stage 5th level or above. Are you sure he only looks like a young man around 25 years old? Around 25 years old, a 5th-level void-prying stage martial artist? In the 1,000-year history of their five-element sect, it seems there has never been such a monstrous talent, right? He does look to be around 25, but if he usually takes care of his appearance, and considering he's a void-prying stage martial artist, his real age should be around 30. The newcomer added, around 30 years old, with a cultivation at the 5th level of the void-prying stage. He would be considered among the top talents in the younger generation of our five-element sect. A glint flashed in the old man's eyes, and a sinister smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Kuzheng, I never thought that on one of your trips outside, you would find such a gifted disciple for your wood peak. It's just a pity that you are destined to be making wedding clothes for our earth peak. The old man looked at the newcomer and instructed, go find that person privately and tell him that if he is willing to switch to our earth peak, the earth peak will bestow upon him a 2nd-grade spirit weapon and a 7th-level intent fragment suitable for him. 2nd-grade spirit weapon, 7th-level intent fragment. Hearing the old man's words, the newcomer's pupils involuntarily constricted, and he asked with some shock, Elder Tang, is it worth it? Of course it's worth it. A glint flashed in the old man's eyes, and he murmured in a voice only he could hear. Such a young powerhouse can create much more value in that place than just this. Go. The old man waved his hand, dismissing the guest, in the spacious room. Duan Ling Tian sat cross-legged on the bed, letting out a long sigh. My spiritual force has remained at the 6th level of the void-prying stage and still hasn't changed. It seems this is definitely a side effect of the Devil Seal tablet bestowing power upon me. Duan Ling Tian gave a bitter smile. Although he had accepted it before, after experiencing the bandit incident today, he couldn't help but re-examine his spiritual force. If his spiritual force had been at the 7th level of the void-prying stage when he encountered that group of bandits today, he wouldn't have needed Kuzheng to act. He alone would have been enough to wipe them all out. The Devil Seal tablet, while it can grant me the power to instantly kill void transformation stage powerhouses, it also leaves significant side effects. Just once, it made my emotions difficult to control, easily agitated, and also suppressed the advancement of my spiritual force. Raising his hand, Duan Ling Tian took out the Devil Seal tablet and murmured as he looked at it, what exactly are you? Although you saved my life, you also took away many things from me. Although he was unwilling to admit it, Duan Ling Tian had to, if the power of the Devil Seal tablet hadn't surged into his body back then, he would have been unable to survive the siege of the 6 Azure Wolf Fort Elders, compared to his life and safety. Both the emotional volatility and the stagnation of his spiritual force seemed insignificant. Great Desert Ancient City, south of the Northern Desert. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 graceful figures appeared in the void almost simultaneously. Looking down at the city below, these were 2 young girls, one in yellow and one in green. They were Han Xuanai and Mu Shui, who had come from the Dahan dynasty. Xuanai, is this the great desert ancient city? Mu Shui curiously examined the city below, asking Han Xuanai. This is it. Han Xuanai nodded. Then her eyes lit up, and she swooped down. Let's go. We'll find someone to ask where the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition is being held. Xuanai, wait for me. Seeing Han Xuanai disappear in a flash, Mu Shui lightly stamped her lotus-like feet and quickly followed. Entering a restaurant, Han Xuanai and Mu Shui sat down and called over the waiter. Waiter, do you know about the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition? Han Xuanai asked. Of course I do. The waiter quickly nodded, then added, Miss, you must have just arrived in our great desert ancient city, right? Yes. Han Xuanai nodded. That's no wonder. However, Miss, if you came for the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, I'm afraid you're late. The 10 Dynasty martial arts competition ended over a month ago. The waiter smiled. However, even if you had arrived on time, Miss, you wouldn't have been able to witness the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition firsthand. You could only wait outside for news. What? Han Xuanai frowned and asked. Because the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition was held by Azure Wolf Fort, in the outer fort of Azure Wolf Fort, and no outsiders were allowed to enter and watch. The waiter continued. At that time, although many people came to join the fun, they all stayed outside waiting for news. Azure Wolf Fort. Mu Shui was stunned, then couldn't help but ask the waiter, Waiter, what's the relationship between this Azure Wolf Fort and Azure Dog Fort? Why are their names so similar? Azure Dog Fort. The waiter was bewildered. What's that? Don't you have an Azure Dog Fort in your great desert ancient city? Mu Shui asked in confusion. She still remembered that Xuanai had told her this. Shui, you've got it wrong. The Azure Dog Fort I mentioned is the Azure Wolf Fort he's talking about. I never thought the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition was actually hosted by Azure Dog Fort. Han Xuanai said to Mu Shui, Shui, let's go ask the people from Azure Dog Fort if they know where. Brother Ling Tian went after the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition ended. The two girls stood up together and walked out of the restaurant. Azure Dog Fort. As soon as Han Xuanai referred to Azure Wolf Fort as Azure Dog Fort, the waiter's expression changed. In this great desert ancient city, someone actually dared to call Azure Wolf Fort that? Was she tired of living? When Han Xuanai finished speaking, the waiter was again startled. 10 Dynasty martial arts competition. Brother Ling Tian? In a flash of lightning, the waiter's eyes suddenly lit up. Could the brother Ling Tian she mentioned be Duan Ling Tian, who won first place in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition? The murderer who killed the clan leader's grandson, young Master Han? The restaurant he was currently working at was an industry under the Donghua family. In the Donghua family, he was just a small, peripheral member with a humble status. But this did not mean he was willing to remain humble forever. He also had a heart that yearned to soar. Therefore, he paid special attention to many matters of the Donghua family, just waiting for an opportunity to turn his fortunes around. Over a month ago, he knew all about the incident where the clan leader's grandson, young Master Han, was killed. The one who killed young Master Han was a young man named Duan Ling Tian. That Duan Ling Tian was also the young powerhouse who ranked first in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition. And he left with the people from the Blade and Sword sect after the competition ended. He never expected that one day he would meet someone who knew Duan Ling Tian, and who seemed to be very closely related to Duan Ling Tian, that he vaguely realized that his opportunity had come. I'm going to get lucky. Shouting in his heart, the waiter chased after Han Xuanai and Mu Shui, who had just walked out of the restaurant. Two young ladies, is the person you're looking for Duan Ling Tian? Duan Ling Tian. The waiter's words made Han Xuanai stop, turn around, and ask with shining eyes, Waiter, do you know my brother Ling Tian? Of course, the waiter said with a smile. Miss, to tell you the truth, this restaurant in front of you is an industry of the Donghua family. Donghua family. Han Xuanai's willow-like eyebrows slightly furrowed. What does that have to do with my brother Ling Tian? What if the person you're looking for happens to be a guest at the Donghua family? The waiter narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile. Brother Ling Tian is a guest at that Donghua family you mentioned? Waiter, quickly tell me, where is that Donghua family? Han Xuanai asked excitedly. Two young ladies, may I ask what your relationship is with young Master Ling Tian? As far as I know, after young Master Ling Tian won first place in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, many people wanted to visit him, but he doesn't meet just anyone. The waiter said with some difficulty that he did this, of course, to further understand the relationship between the two young girls and Duan Ling Tian, that if they didn't have a close relationship with Duan Ling Tian, even if he tricked them into going to the Donghua family, he wouldn't get any benefits. Humph. Can those people compare to me? You go to the Donghua family now, find my brother Ling Tian, and tell him that Xuan Nai is waiting for him here. Do you believe that brother Ling Tian will appear before me within 10 breaths? Hearing the waiter's words, Han Xuan Nai immediately became angry. Hearing Han Xuan Nai's words, the waiter was completely convinced. This yellow-clad girl in front of him must have an extraordinary relationship with that Duan Ling Tian. Otherwise, how would she dare to speak so presumptuously? Please calm your anger, Mississippi. I was just worried that someone might disturb young Master Ling Tian's peace, which is why I asked. Since Miss has such a close relationship with young Master Ling Tian, I will now take you to the Donghua family to see young Master Ling Tian. The waiter said, leading the way. Two young ladies. The Donghua family is over there. Shui, let's go. We're going to find brother Ling Tian. Han Xuan Nai called out to Mu Shui, and the two followed the waiter towards the Donghua family. Soon, the three arrived outside the Donghua family's residence, the main entrance of the Donghua family's residence. The several Donghua family disciples guarding there frowned when they saw three people walking towards them. Just then, a Yuan Li sound transmission reached their ears, causing their brows to relax. Don't alert them. The two young ladies behind me are the sisters of Duan Ling Tian, the murderer who killed young Master Han over a month ago. I lied to them, saying Duan Ling Tian is a guest at the Donghua family, so all of you cooperate. Otherwise, if the clan leader blames you, you won't be able to bear the responsibility. This was naturally the waiter's Yuan Li sound transmission. Hey, brothers, these two young ladies are young Master Ling Tian's sisters, and they've come to find young Master Ling Tian. Why aren't you quickly going to inform him? The waiter stood at the main entrance of the Donghua family's residence, puffed out his chest, and said to the several Donghua family disciples, so it's young Master Ling Tian's sisters. Please come in quickly. The Donghua family disciples who had received the waiter's Yuan Li sound transmission, reminded by the waiter, dared not neglect them in the slightest. One of them quickly welcomed Han Xuan Nai and Mu Shui into the Donghua family's residence. I'll go inform young Master Ling Tian. Another person walked into the Donghua family's residence alone and rushed towards the residence of their Donghua family clan leader. Donghua laid an asterisk in the vast lake of the Donghua family mansion. The lakeside pavilion, which had been destroyed just over a month ago, had been rebuilt at some unknown time. On one side of the pavilion, an old man sat quietly, holding a fishing rod, engrossed in fishing. Although the old man was fishing, his eyes were tightly closed, and his face held a hint of loneliness. This old man looked no different from an ordinary old man. After a long while, sigh. The old man opened his eyes, let out a long sigh, pulled up his fishing rod, looked at the straight hook, and murmured, ever since Honor left, I haven't been able to calm my heart. Honor, do you know that ever since your grandpa heard the news of your departure, I haven't caught a single fish? The old man took a deep breath, and at some point, his eyes welled up with tears. Patriarch. Suddenly, an urgent voice came from afar, startling the old man, whose eyes narrowed, and then the tears in his eyes evaporated. What is it? The old man stood up and looked at the Donghua family disciple standing on the lake shore, his expression slightly sinking. Don't you know I hate being disturbed when I'm fishing? Patriarch, it's that Duan Ling Tian. The Donghua family disciple had just opened his mouth, but before he could finish speaking, he felt a strong gust of wind assault him. Immediately after, an aged figure appeared before him. Precisely the old man who had been by the lakeside pavilion a moment ago. The Donghua family patriarch, Donghua Lei. What did you just say about Duan Ling Tian? Donghua Lei's eyes gleamed with cold light, staring intently at the Donghua family disciple before him, and he asked in a deep voice. The Donghua family disciple was so pressured he could barely breathe. After a long pause, he finally spoke with difficulty. Duan. It's Duan Ling Tian's sister. Duan Ling Tian's sister is here. Duan Ling Tian's sister. The cold light in Donghua Lei's eyes intensified, and he asked in a deep voice, where is she? The main hall. The Donghua family disciple said with difficulty, whoosh. As soon as the Donghua family disciple finished speaking, a strong gust of wind swept up in front of him, making his hair and robes fluttered. As for Donghua Lei, the Donghua family patriarch, he had long since disappeared. Duan Ling Tian's sister? Donghua Lei rushed towards the Donghua family's main hall, his eyes revealing a chilling glint. Duan Ling Tian, you joined the Blade and Sword sect, so I can't touch you. But I can kill your sister to avenge my grandson. You made me suffer the pain of losing a grandson, so I will make you taste the pain of losing a sister. At this moment, the hatred that Donghua Lei had deeply buried in his heart surged forth again. Like a volcanic eruption, unstoppable. Back then, after the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, he had waited outside Kangwol Fortress, ready to seize an opportunity to kill Duan Ling Tian and avenge his grandson. But who knew? Duan Ling Tian had left with the people from the Blade and Sword sect, leaving him no way to act. When he learned that Duan Ling Tian had joined the Blade and Sword sect, he realized that it would be very difficult for him to avenge his grandson. For a time, he could only deeply bury his bitter hatred for Duan Ling Tian in his heart. And now, knowing that Duan Ling Tian's sister had come to their Donghua family mansion, he had only one thought: kill Duan Ling Tian's sister to avenge his grandson. Kill, 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 kill. In Donghua Lei's mind, only this thought remained at this moment. He seemed to have transformed into a god of death. In the main hall of the Donghua family, two young girls stood, graceful and slender. Xuanai, I always feel that something is off about this matter. Mu Shui frowned slightly, glanced at the waiter from the restaurant standing at the main entrance, and whispered to Han Xuanai. Han Xuanai heard this, looked at the waiter, and asked, Waiter, why hasn't my brother Ling Tian come yet? Please wait a moment, young ladies. Young Master Ling Tian will be here soon. The waiter appeased Han Xuanai and Mu Shui, but his gaze remained fixed outside, as if he was waiting for something. Whoosh. Finally, a gust of wind arrived, causing the waiter to involuntarily close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he found an extra figure in front of him, an old, aged figure, a figure extremely familiar to him. Greetings, Patriarch. Taking a deep breath, the waiter saluted the old man with excitement, respectfully and reverently. Did you bring Duan Ling Tian's sister? Donghua Lei nodded and asked, Yes. The waiter responded respectfully. Very good. Wait here. Once I resolve this matter, I will reward you handsomely. As soon as Donghua Lei finished speaking, he transformed into a bolt of lightning, instantly shooting into the main hall and standing opposite Han Xuanai and Mu Shui. Who are you? Han Xuanai frowned as she looked at Donghua Lei and asked. Mu Shui stared at Donghua Lei, her pretty face becoming slightly solemn, as if facing a formidable enemy. Are both of you Duan Ling Tian's sisters? Donghua Lei looked at the two young girls, about 15 or 16 years old, and asked in a deep voice. At this moment, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold glint flashed through them. Old man, do you also know my brother Ling Tian? Do you know where my brother Ling Tian is? Han Xuanai asked again, as if she hadn't noticed anything amiss with the atmosphere. Duan Ling Tian is not here. Donghua Lei said indifferently, Not here. Upon hearing this, a coldness appeared in Han Xuanai's bright eyes, and a chilling aura swept up from her body at the same time. Han Xuanai looked at the waiter from the restaurant standing at the main entrance, her tone revealing extreme coldness. You dare to lie to me? Miss, I apologize. For my future, I can only sacrifice you all. The waiter took a deep breath and said frankly, Die. Han Xuanai's eyes instantly became covered with a layer of frost. As she raised her hand, an extremely cold aura swept out, enveloping the waiter. The cold wind blew, and the waiter turned into an ice sculpture. Through the ice sculpture, one could vaguely see the waiter's eyes, filled with horror. Above the void, the phenomena of heaven and earth dispersed before they could fully form. Ice intent, Donghua Lei exclaimed. He had not expected Duan Ling Tian's sister to have comprehended ice intent, and its power seemed quite formidable. However, he was not afraid. He was a void transformation stage level 6 existence. Could it be that he couldn't defeat a mere 15 or 16-year-old girl? No, 15 or 16 years old. Suddenly, Donghua Lei realized a problem. This young girl in yellow. only 15 or 16 years old, had actually comprehended ice intent. Moreover, judging by the level of that ice intent, it didn't seem low. Are you a demon? Dongwale looked at Han Xuanai and asked in a deep voice that I in his opinion. For the young girl in yellow to possess such terrifying cultivation at such a young age, there could only be one possibility. She was a demon. A demon, that is, a demonic beast that has broken through to the void transformation stage. Because demonic beasts that break through to the void transformation stage can transform into human form. When referring to them, the word beast is omitted. Demons, in addition to having intelligence no less than humans, can also transform into human form. After transforming into human form, they are no different from ordinary humans. Demon? Hearing Dongwale's words, Han Xuanai frowned. What's wrong with a demon? From your tone, you look down on demons. In the past, Qingnu, who was always by Han Xuanai's side, was a demon, and a powerful one at that. Therefore, in Han Xuanai's heart, there was not much difference between demons and humans. It seems she really is a demon. Dongwale's heart sank. He never expected Duan Ling Tian to have a demon as a sister, and for a moment, he found it somewhat unbelievable. Humph. Since Brother Ling Tian isn't here, I should leave. Old man, you don't need to see me out. Han Xuanai snorted, took Mu Xuei's slender hand, and walked out. Xuei, let's go to Tsang. Before Han Xuanai could finish speaking, a strong gust of wind had already reached her, and an aged figure appeared, blocking her and Mu Xuei's path. Old man, why are you blocking my way? Han Xuanai's voice became several shades colder. Xuei, don't you understand yet? This old fellow probably has a grudge against your brother Ling Tian. Mu Xuei gave a wry smile. She only felt that her childhood playmate was truly too naive, completely unaware of the wickedness of human hearts. You have a grudge against my brother Ling Tian? Hearing Mu Xuei's words, Han Xuanai looked at Dongwale warily. Indeed, Dongwale did not deny it, stating directly that Duan Ling Tian killed my grandson, cut off my lineage, and made me suffer the pain of losing a grandson. There is an irreconcilable enmity between us. By the end, Dongwale roared, his eyes turning bloodshot. This moment, Dongwale seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty beast, glaring menacingly at Han Xuanai and Mu Xuei. Humph. Han Xuanai snorted dismissively and said calmly, since my brother Ling Tian killed your useless grandson, then naturally your grandson deserved to die. Why are you rambling on in front of me? You wouldn't be afraid of my brother Ling Tian, so you want to take it out on me, would you? A hint of mocking laughter appeared on Han Xuanai's pretty face. Me, afraid of Duan Ling Tian? Hearing Han Xuanai's words, Dongwale was first stunned. Then he couldn't help but burst into laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. What are you laughing at? Han Xuanai's face was covered with a layer of frost, and a bone-chilling cold aura began to accumulate on her body, ready to burst forth at any moment. If that Duan Ling Tian hadn't joined the Blade and Sword sect, do you think he would still be alive now? However, today, killing you two little girls will be just as good. Dongwale's elemental energy roared, instantly transforming into vast gusts of wind, causing some of the furnishings in the main hall to sway. He made me suffer the pain of losing a grandson, so I will let him thoroughly enjoy the pain of losing a sister. You two little girls, when you reincarnate in your next life, remember not to know Duan Ling Tian again. As soon as Dongwale finished speaking, the fierce winds swept out from his body, accompanied by solid wind blades, overwhelming and enveloping Han Xuanai and Mu Xuei. Dongwale, in his extreme fury, attacked without holding back, only refraining from taking out his spirit weapon. Whoosh! In an instant, above the void, first appeared 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms, followed by another 700 ancient horned dragon phantoms. The 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms were the manifestation of Dongwale's full yuan force, a heaven and earth phenomenon formed by drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth, 6th level of the void transformation stage. The 700 ancient horned dragon phantoms were the heaven and earth phenomenon formed by drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth through the 6th level void transformation concept. 6th level advanced wind concept. Concept. The void prying concept, also a low-level concept, is the most basic concept. A first-level void prying concept corresponds to the power of 1 ancient horned dragon. A second-level void prying concept corresponds to the power of 2 ancient horned dragons, and so on. A 9th-level void prying concept corresponds to the power of 9 ancient horned dragons. Once broken through, understanding the void insight concept, which is a mid-level concept. A first-level void insight concept corresponds to the power of 20 ancient horned dragons. A second-level void insight concept corresponds to the power of 30 ancient horned dragons, and so on. A 9th-level void insight concept corresponds to the power of 100 ancient horned dragons. Breaking through again to comprehend the void transformation concept, which is a high-level concept, the most advanced concept, capable of forming precious concept fragments within the body. A first-level void transformation concept corresponds to the power of 200 ancient horned dragons. A second-level void transformation concept corresponds to the power of 300 ancient horned dragons, and so on. A 9th-level void transformation concept corresponds to the power of 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Boom. Buzz. 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 The vast yuan force surging from Donghua, fused with the 6th-level advanced wind concept, transformed into a vast gale, accompanied by overwhelming wind blades, sweeping towards the two girls, Han Xuanai and Mu Shui. The full power of 1,500 ancient horned dragons unleashed. Donghua stared at the two girls, his eyes filled with madness, as if he had already seen them perish. However, his eyes, mixed with a crazy laugh, quickly couldn't help but shrink. Heavens! What did he see? Umph! Han Xuanai let out a soft snort. The cold air that had already accumulated on her body surged out, like a gust of extremely cold wind, the terrifying cold wind, as if a giant ice and snow beast was breathing, instantly collided with the gale and wind blades sweeping out from Donghua, producing terrifying explosions of air. Boom, 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 boom. The air explosions were like thunder, startling the entire Donghua family's main hall as if an earthquake had occurred, causing it to tremble violently at the point where the forces converged. The ground cracked, and fissures spread in all directions, forming a giant spiderweb. The air seemed to freeze, and the entire hall felt like it had plunged into winter, exuding a biting cold. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. After the two forces collided, the cold wind originating from Han Xuanai completely overwhelmed the gale and wind blades sweeping out from Donghua, then continued its momentum, rushing towards Donghua. No! Upon realizing his attack was suppressed, Dongguolei's face changed dramatically, his pupils wide with shock, and he immediately tried to flee. Unfortunately, as soon as Dongguolei turned around and rose into the air, he was engulfed by the cold wind. The next moment, Dongguolei, who was in midair, turned into an ice sculpture. The ice sculpture. Dongguolei's pupils were filled with extreme fear that he never dreamed that Duan Ling Tian's sister would be so terrifying, easily crushing his full-strength attack. No, I don't want to die. I still want to avenge Honor. No, no. Dongguolei, trapped in the ice sculpture, screamed inwardly. At this moment, he only felt an extremely cold force, piercing into his body through every pore, completely annihilating his yuan force. Not only that, his meridians, internal organs, flesh, bones, everything, was quickly frozen by that extremely cold force. When his heart was frozen and his soul shattered, Dongguolei's consciousness faded away. Boom. Dongguolei, turned into an ice sculpture, lingered in the air for a moment, then fell heavily, smashing onto the ground and turning into a pile of ice sculpture fragments. The cold air in the main hall gradually dissipated, and the icy power on Han Xuanai's body receded, the frost on her tender and beautiful face also vanishing. Humph. With such meager strength, he dared to challenge this young lady from Fushu.com. Overestimating himself, Han Xuanai looked at the pile of ice sculpture fragments before her and let out a cool snort at the same time. Above her head in the void, the sky full of ancient horned dragon phantoms gradually dispersed, restoring peace to the entire hall. Xuanai, what are you doing? Mu Shui asked curiously, watching Han Xuanai search for something among the pile of ice sculpture fragments. Found it. At this moment, a piece of ice sculpture fragment appeared in Han Xuanai's hand. As an invisible force surged from her hand, the ice melted, and a cyan fragment appeared in her palm. 6th level wind concept fragment. It was the crystallization of this 6th level advanced wind concept that Donghua Lei had painstakingly comprehended throughout his life, which could help others quickly grasp the wind concept until they reached this 6th level advanced wind concept. And with his death, the concept fragment within his body was destined to become a wedding dress for others. Xuanai, what do you want such a low-level item for? Seeing Han Xuanai happily examining the concept fragment in her hand, Mu Shui frowned, a little puzzled. Hehe, you wouldn't understand. This thing is useless to us, but it's useful to Brother Ling Tian and his relatives and friends. I'll give it to him when I see him. Han Xuanai giggled. I'm becoming more and more curious to meet that Duan Ling Tian. Someone who can make our little devil girl Han Xuanai care so much must not be a simple person. Mu Shui's autumn eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she teased with a smile. Pa! Hearing Mu Shui's words, Han Xuanai immediately became displeased, pouting and spitting. You're the little devil girl. I'm clearly a little lady, okay? A little lady? Hearing Han Xuanai's words, Mu Shui couldn't help but glance at the pile of shattered ice sculptures on the ground. The ice sculpture that was Donghua Lei, the head of the Donghua family, and felt a surge of speechlessness that I asked this something a lady would do. Xuanai, I've noticed that since your last outing, your skin has gotten thicker and thicker. Did that guy named Duan Ling Tian corrupt you? Mu Shui said earnestly. If so, when I go back, I'll definitely tell Uncle Han to give that Duan Ling Tian a good lesson. Shui, don't say I didn't warn you. If you dare to tell on me, not only will I burn Uncle Mu's hair, but I'll burn your hair too. Han Xuanai put her hands on her hips and glared. Mu Shui couldn't help but shiver as Han Xuanai's companion since childhood. She knew the little devil girl's temper all too well. She absolutely meant what she said. I was just kidding. Mu Shui had to compromise for the sake of her soft and beautiful hair. That's more like it. Han Xuanai's tense face relaxed, blooming into a captivating smile. She took Mu Shui's hand and walked out. Let's go. We'll go to Cangzhou Fort and ask that guy if he knows where Brother Ling Tian went. After the two walked out of the Donghua family's main hall, Han Xuanai casually raised her hand, and a gust of wind swept through, knocking down the waiter from the restaurant who had been frozen into an ice sculpture. Boom! The human-shaped ice sculpture fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Humph. How dare he lie to this young lady from Fushu.com? Glaring angrily at the pile of ice sculpture fragments, Han Xuanai and Mu Shui ascended into the air together, leaving the Donghua family's mansion. And after they left, the entire Donghua family fell into chaos. Their Donghua family's patriarch was dead. For a time, the high-ranking members of the Donghua family began to scramble for power, spiraling out of control. After this day, the Donghua family was plagued by internal strife and external troubles, and within a few years, it completely declined, becoming an insignificant small family in the ancient city of the Great Desert, eastern part of the Northern Desert. And Ding City, too slow. Duan Ling Tian, sitting cross-legged on the bed, looked at the wind concept fragment in his hand and couldn't help but sigh. Currently, in terms of cultivation, he had broken through to the 5th level of the Void Insight stage. In terms of concepts, he had comprehended the 3rd level mid-grade wind concept. To comprehend a higher level of wind concept, even with the aid of concept fragments, would still take some time. However, if he focused solely on comprehending the wind concept, he would undoubtedly fall behind in his other concepts. In addition to the wind concept, Duan Ling Tian had also comprehended the lightning concept, earth concept, and sword concept. However, compared to the wind concept, the current levels of the other 3 concepts were not worth mentioning. If only I could simultaneously comprehend all 4 of these concepts using their respective concept fragments at once, Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself, dreaming. while 3 more concept fragments appeared in his hand. These were the lightning concept fragment, earth concept fragment, and sword concept fragment. Long ago, Duan Ling Tian had tried to use 2 concept fragments to comprehend 2 concepts at the same time. The result, naturally, was failure. One cannot serve 2 masters. This is common sense. This time, Duan Ling Tian held 4 concept fragments and, by some strange impulse, wanted to try again if he could use 2 concept fragments to comprehend 2 concepts at once. Wind, lightning. Duan Ling Tian closed his eyes, intending to multitask, simultaneously comprehending the wind concept and the lightning concept. Duan Ling Tian, who had expected failure and was even mentally prepared for it, was horrified to discover that his consciousness had, at some point, split, comprehending the wind concept and the lightning concept separately. At first, Duan Ling Tian thought it was his imagination, but after a thorough confirmation, he was absolutely certain. This was not an illusion, but reality. Simultaneously comprehending 2 concepts using 2 different concept fragments, multitasking. Even in the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, this is almost impossible. And now, I've done it. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp, asterisk at the same time. With the help of 2 concept fragments, he comprehended 2 concepts, effectively multitasking. Duan Ling Tian's expression was solemn, and his breathing became heavy. Just now, when I tried to simultaneously comprehend the wind concept and thunder concept through the wind concept fragment and thunder concept fragment, my consciousness split into 2, comprehending both concepts at once. Moreover, the speed at which my divided consciousness comprehended the wind concept was no different from before. Duan Ling Tian gasped again. What exactly is going on? I couldn't do this before, but now I've managed it. Curious, Duan Ling Tian sifted through the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, hoping to find an answer. However, even the Rebirth Martial Emperor, who had lived 2 lives and seen countless grand spectacles, had never heard of anyone being able to multitask and comprehend 2 concepts simultaneously. But, according to the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories, consciousness originates from the soul. I tried to comprehend 2 concepts simultaneously before, but failed, proving that my consciousness at that time couldn't split in 2. Now, my consciousness can split in 2, allowing me to comprehend 2 different concepts simultaneously using 2 different concept fragments. Since consciousness originates from the soul, any changes in consciousness are naturally related to the soul. For a moment, Duan Ling Tian began to ponder. Finally, he could only think of one possibility: the demon's sealing tablet. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian muttered to himself. Besides the demon's sealing tablet, he couldn't think of any other reason. Back then, the power of the demon's sealing tablet surged into his body and soul, causing him to become demonic, granting him the power to instantly kill void-prying stage powerhouses while his consciousness was in a hazy state. After that incident, the demon sealing tablet left 2 major after-effects in his body. First, his emotions became extremely irritable and difficult to control. Second, his mental strength was suppressed and no longer increased with his cultivation. It seems that the incident affected my soul, causing my consciousness to change and allowing it to split in 2. The more Duan Ling Tian thought about it, the more certain he became. Other than this, there seemed to be no other reason. My consciousness splitting into 2, allowing me to comprehend 2 different concepts simultaneously with 2 different concept fragments. This means that in terms of concept comprehension, I have an advantage over ordinary martial artists. Ordinary martial artists can only focus on comprehending 1 concept at a time, and it takes them twice as long to comprehend 2 concepts to a certain level. But I don't need to spend that much time because I can comprehend 2 different concepts simultaneously. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian was a little excited. With his consciousness able to split in 2, he could simultaneously comprehend another concept while comprehending the wind concept, rapidly raising that concept's level. That's right. Duan Ling Tian's gaze inadvertently fell on the 4 concept fragments in his hand, and he suddenly had an idea, as if remembering something. Since my consciousness can split into 2 and simultaneously comprehend 2 different concepts, I wonder if I can try to split it into four and simultaneously comprehend four different concepts. It must be said that Duan Ling Tian's ambition was great. Unfortunately, after some experimentation, he helplessly discovered that his consciousness could only split into two at most. In other words, he could only comprehend two different concepts simultaneously, not three or even four different concepts. What a pity! If I could truly comprehend and improve four different concepts simultaneously, that would be amazing. Duan Ling Tian sighed, but did not get discouraged, in his opinion. Being able to comprehend two different concepts simultaneously was already much stronger than ordinary martial artists. Comprehending two different concepts. Duan Ling Tian's gaze once again fell on the four concept fragments in his hand, and he finally put away the earth concept fragment and the sword concept fragment. His strongest comprehended concept right now was the wind concept, having already comprehended the third level, mid-grade wind concept. Next was the thunder concept. Once I successfully comprehend the mid-grade thunder concept, my strength will experience a brand new leap. Just like Su Li. During the 10 Dynasty martial competition, Su Li simultaneously displayed two mid-grade concepts, which surprised many people. That time. Among the young talents of the 10 dynasties, Su was the only one who had simultaneously comprehended two mid-grade concepts. Thunder concept. Taking a deep breath, Duan Ling Tian held the wind concept fragment in one hand and the thunder concept fragment in the other, comprehending both concepts while cultivating 9 Dragon War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Transformation. Duan Ling Tian's divided consciousness, on one side, delved into the ocean of wind, comprehending the wind concept. On the other side, it plunged into thunderclouds, comprehending the thunder concept. His cultivation and both concepts rapidly improved together, ever since breaking through to the void prying stage. Duan Ling Tian had discovered that the potent medicinal power of the nirvana pill was extremely repulsive to the heaven and earth yuan qi absorbed into his body from outside, including the heaven and earth yuan qi from primeval stones. Therefore, Duan Ling Tian no longer needed to consume primeval stones for cultivation, because even if he wanted to, the potent medicinal power of the nirvana pill would not allow the heaven and earth yuan qi from the primeval stones to come into contact with the yuan force in his body. That if he had to make an analogy, the medicinal power of the nirvana pill was extremely possessive. It monopolized the yuan force in Duan Ling Tian's body and would not allow heaven and earth yuan qi to infringe upon it in any way. Unconsciously, 3 days passed, and Duan Ling Tian woke up, letting out a sigh of relief. His cultivation had not broken through. Neither of the two concepts had broken through, but Duan Ling Tian was still very happy, because he could now comprehend two different concepts simultaneously as long as he was given time. The concepts he comprehended could surpass anyone. The saying "you win some, you lose some" is absolutely true. My mental strength was suppressed, but I unexpectedly gained this ability to comprehend two concepts simultaneously. After a self-deprecating smile, Duan Ling Tian opened the door to his room, which he hadn't opened for 3 days, and walked out, finding no movement from Yixin's room. He couldn't help but smile and shake his head. That girl is really pushing herself. Duan Ling Tian naturally knew that Yixin was cultivating in her room, standing on the balcony of the pavilion. Duan Ling Tian looked at the vast training ground ahead. It was empty, appearing somewhat desolate. Duan Ling Tian. Suddenly, a voice reached Duan Ling Tian's ears. When he turned his head, he saw a young man emerge from a nearby pavilion balcony. Greeting him, that he remembered this young man. He was one of the 2 Wood Peak disciples he had seen when he first arrived here. The Wood Peak disciple who was luckier and wasn't thrown out by him. Something wrong? Duan Ling Tian glanced at the Wood Peak disciple and asked indifferently, "Duan Ling Tian, why did you come to Wood Peak?" The Wood Peak disciple asked Duan Ling Tian why. Duan Ling Tian gave the Wood Peak disciple a deep look and retorted, "Then why did you?" "Naturally, it's to obtain better cultivation resources, especially high-level concept fragments and grade 2 spirit weapons." The Wood Peak disciple said as a matter of course. "Then we're the same." Duan Ling Tian shrugged. Upon hearing this, The Wood Peak disciple's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. What? Do you have some good news? Seeing the Wood Peak disciple's expression, Duan Ling Tian asked with a look of anticipation, no longer communicating with the other party through Yuan force condensation. The Wood Peak disciple didn't mind, nodded, and continued to speak through Yuan force condensation. Since you and I are on the same path, I'll show you a clear way. Elder Tang Lin of the Earth Peak of the Five Elements sect is very interested in you and wants you to join the Earth Peak. Earth Peak? Elder Tang Lin. Duan Ling Tian was a little surprised, then asked, if I'm not mistaken, you should be a Wood Peak disciple, right? Why are you recruiting for Earth Peak here? I'm only a Wood Peak disciple on the surface. My true identity is an Earth Peak disciple, and the person you defeated a few days ago was also an Earth Peak disciple. The Earth Peak disciple, lurking in Wood Peak, continued to speak to Duan Ling Tian via Yuan force condensation. So that's how it is. What benefits can Earth Peak offer me? Duan Ling Tian asked again. A Grade 2 spirit weapon and a 7th level concept fragment. The Earth Peak disciple seemed to have been influenced by Duan Ling Tian's continuous speaking, and this time, he also didn't communicate with Duan Ling Tian via Yuan force condensation. Perhaps, in his opinion, there was no one around, so it didn't matter if he spoke out loud. That's stingy? Upon hearing the Earth Peak disciple's words, Duan Ling Tian frowned. Stingy? Upon hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, the Earth Peak disciple was stunned. This was considered stingy? That was a Grade 2 spirit weapon and a 7th level concept fragment. Of course, if he knew that Duan Ling Tian possessed Grade 1 spirit weapons and even quasi-emperor grade spirit weapons that surpassed Grade 1 spirit weapons, he probably wouldn't think that way. As for concept fragments, Duan Ling Tian cared even less in his opinion. The concept fragments he currently possessed were enough to last him until the void prying stage. Once his cultivation broke through to the void prying stage, he would have a certain level of strength to venture into the outer territory. At that time, he would retrieve the great treasure left by the Rebirth Martial Emperor. Once that great treasure was retrieved, not to mention various 9th level concept fragments being readily available, he wouldn't even lack profound fragments. Therefore, he truly didn't care for any 7th level concept fragments. Duan Ling Tian, aren't you being too greedy? The Earth Peak disciple asked in a deep-voiced, in his opinion. The reason Duan Ling Tian disliked the low price offered by Earth Peak was undoubtedly to haggle. This is called greedy? Your Earth Peak is truly stingy. Duan Ling Tian sighed. Then you mean you're unwilling to join our Earth Peak? A cold glint flashed in the Earth Peak disciple's eyes, and he asked in a deep voice, what? Are you Earth Peak disciples planning to use force? Duan Ling Tian sized up the Earth Peak disciple with interest, then sneered, you, it seems, don't have the strength to use force against me, do you? You. The Earth Peak disciple's face changed, and he said with a sullen expression, Duan Ling Tian, our Elder Tang wants you to switch to our Earth Peak because he thinks highly of you. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit? Good, very good. Before Duan Ling Tian could speak, a cold voice came, not only making the Earth Peak disciple's face change drastically, but also startling Duan Ling Tian. Looking at the one-armed old man who appeared out of thin air, Duan Ling Tian felt a chill run down his spine. When did Elder Yang hide nearby? He had been completely unaware that it was conceivable that if Elder Yang wanted to attack him, he might have been killed before he even reacted. The one-armed old man was none other than Wood Peak's elder. Yang Ling. After Yang Ling appeared, he smiled faintly at Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian, you are very good. Faced with the temptation of a Grade 2 spirit weapon and a 7th level profound fragment, you remained unmoved. That's rare. Hearing Yang Ling's praise, Duan Ling Tian felt a little guilty that he wasn't unmoved. He simply didn't care for that Grade 2 spirit weapon and 7th level profound fragment at all, because they held no value for him if it had been an edict fragment, an Emperor grade spirit weapon, or something similar. Even if he didn't switch to Earth Peak, he would definitely find a way to get his hands on it. Whoosh. When the Earth Peak disciple saw Yang Ling appear, his face completely changed, and his body trembled violently out of fear when he saw that Yang Ling After appearing, ignored him and spoke to Duan Ling Tian instead. A look of wild joy immediately appeared on his face. Run. Without any hesitation, the Earth Peak disciple shot off into the distance, clearly intending to escape. However, could a mere void transformation stage 2 martial artist escape in front of Yang Ling, a Wood Peak elder? Seeing the Earth Peak disciple flee, Duan Ling Tian's lips curled into a sneer. Although he didn't know Yang Ling's exact strength, Yang Ling was undoubtedly a profundity stage powerhouse. Moreover, even Elder Ku had to address Yang Ling as senior brother, so Yang Ling's strength was naturally considerable, probably not inferior to Ke Zhang's. Seeing the Earth Peak disciple trying to escape, Yang Ling narrowed his eyes, then raised his single arm, swung it in a full circle, and began to spin rapidly to at the same time. A vast gust of wind surged from Yang Ling's continuously counter-rotating severed arm, forming a wind vortex as his arm spun to as soon as the vortex appeared. It emitted a terrifying suction force, directed straight at the Earth Peak disciple. Almost instantly, the rapidly fleeing Earth Peak disciple's body stiffened. And then, like an arrow shot from a bow, he flew back, completely losing control of his body. Swoosh. The Earth Peak disciple, enveloped by the vortex's suction, passively transformed into a bolt of lightning and plunged into the vortex without any pause. No. This was the last tragic cry the Earth Peak disciple uttered before his death. After he was sucked into the vortex, he turned into a rain of blood, completely disappearing between heaven and earth, dead. At the same time, Yang Ling retracted his hand like lightning, and the vortex formed by his severed arm and immense power also vanished, because Yang Ling's actions, from striking to retracting, happened in an instant. Therefore, the natural phenomenon in the sky above had not yet fully formed before it dissipated again. Hiss. Looking at the one-armed old man, who didn't have a single drop of blood on him, Duan Ling Tian gasped, his heart filled with shock. This Elder Yang's strength is even greater than that of Elder Ku after his breakthrough. Ku Zhang, after his breakthrough, was at the Void Transformation Stage 7. He had once made a move in front of Duan Ling Tian, instantly killing a Void Transformation Stage 7 bandit. Now, Yang Ling had also made a move in front of Duan Ling Tian, and he had used an extremely powerful heaven-grade martial skill, Duan Ling Tian, who had integrated the memories of the Reincarnation Martial Emperor's 2 lives and inherited the Reincarnation Martial Emperor's keen insight, could easily tell that Yang Ling was stronger than Ke Zhang. Swoosh. A gust of wind whistled in the distance, attracting Duan Ling Tian's gaze to in the high sky in the distance. The Wood Peak disciple who had been injured by Duan Ling Tian a few days ago, or, to be precise, the Earth Peak disciple, who had been lurking in Wood Peak, seemed to have realized his identity was exposed and was fleeing into the distance. Duan Ling Tian shook his head that he knew that Earth Peak disciple wouldn't be able to escape. The facts were exactly as Duan Ling Tian had expected. As the one-armed old man disappeared from his sight, the Earth Peak disciple in the distance exploded almost simultaneously, turning into a rain of blood. Blood splattered across the sky, and the figure of the one-armed old man appeared. Immediately after, he disappeared again. Wood Peak. Perhaps there are no outstanding youths, but the older generation is filled with powerful experts. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but sigh that it made sense. After all, more than 20 years ago, Wood Peak was the strongest of the other 4 peaks under the 5-element sect's Gold Peak. The reason Wood Peak was strong back then was undoubtedly due to the support of this current batch of older generation powerhouses. Big Brother Duan. A melodious voice, like that of a yellow oriole, reached Duan Ling Tian, bringing him back to his senses. He turned to look in the direction of the voice. There, a beautiful young girl stood. The girl was about 16 or 17 years old and seemed quite spirited. Oh. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian noticed something amiss. After extending his spiritual force, he got the answer. Xiao Xian, you've broken through? Duan Ling Tian asked, somewhat surprised. The girl, Yi Xian, nodded excitedly, then said with a confident expression, give me another month, and I'm confident I can break through to nascent soul stage 9. Hearing this, Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised, but rather felt a little sigh that he knew that Yi Xian's rapid progress, besides the high-purity pills he refined for her, was most importantly due to the aid of elemental stones for cultivation, coupled with Yi Xian's current talent. Her progress was naturally swift. Then keep up the good work. Perhaps, in the future, even Wood Peak will have to rely on you to support it. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile, Big brother Duan, don't joke around. Yi Xian playfully stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, the future of Wood Peak will definitely rest on your shoulders, Big brother Duan. As for me, I'm just a small, insignificant person. Duan Ling Tian shook his head, not offering further explanation. What could he say? Could he say that he couldn't stay in the Five-Element sect indefinitely? Could he say that he joined the Five-Element sect only to reunite with his friends? As for what he had just said, Duan Ling Tian was naturally not speaking idly. Perhaps Yi Xian's current strength was not much, but he believed that with a good cultivation environment and resources, in another 10 or 20 years, Yi Xian would definitely become the most outstanding disciple of Wood Peak's younger generation, south of the Northern Desert. Ancient Desert City, Azure Wolf Castle, Inner Castle in the luxurious Central Hall. A yellow-clad girl sat at the head seat, her delicate brows slightly furrowed. Looking displeased, the green-clad girl sat quietly at the lower seat. After a long while, she finally spoke, Xuanai, it's been 3 days. How much longer do you plan to wait? These two girls were Han Xuanai and Mu Shui, who had arrived at Azure Wolf Castle 3 days ago. Humph. Han Xuanai snorted, then stood up, her bright eyes sparkling with brilliance. I don't care anymore. If that guy doesn't come out to see me soon, I'll freeze all 5 of those guys into popsicles. As soon as her words fell, a chilling aura rose from Han Xuanai's body. Whoosh. As this biting coldness swept out, Han Xuanai's figure vanished from her original spot. Someone's going to have a bad day again. Mu Shui shook her head and followed after her, in a spacious courtyard within the inner castle. 4 old men and 1 middle-aged man sat around a table at this moment. The 5 of them had one thing in common. Their brows were all tightly furrowed, as if they had encountered some troublesome matter. If any Azure Wolf Castle disciples were here, they would surely recognize them at a glance. The 5 people sitting together were precisely the 5 vice-castellan of their Azure Wolf Castle. Master, what should we do now? It's been 3 days, and that little ancestor still hasn't left. It seems she's determined to wear us down. Feng Wei looked at the old man sitting opposite him, a bitter smile on his face. The old man was Luo Fu, one of the 2 Void Transformation Stage 9 Vice-Castellans in Azure Wolf Castle. He was also Feng Wei's master. Even if she's determined, there's nothing we can do. You've all seen it. Even the Castellan, upon hearing that little ancestor had arrived, was scared enough to hide. Luo Fu said with a bitter smile. Although he was the chief of the 5 vice-castellans of Azure Wolf Castle, the most powerful existence below the castellan, he was helpless against that yellow-clad girl. That yellow-clad girl was not someone he could afford to provoke. He still remembered the first time he met the yellow-clad girl. She had an old woman accompanying her. That old woman, even their castellan of Azure Wolf Castle, would humbly address as senior. Their castellan of Azure Wolf Castle was in existence at the Void Stage peak, only half a step away from the Martial Emperor stage. From this, the old woman's strength was imaginable. She must be in existence above the Martial Emperor stage. What shocked him most was not even that. He remembered that even someone as strong as that old woman would respectfully address the yellow-clad girl as Miss on fushu.net, appearing more like a servant by the girl's side, with a servant who was in existence above the Martial Emperor stage. The terrifying background of the girl was easily imaginable. Last time the Castellan went into seclusion, it seemed to be because of her. After the Castellan came out, his beard had changed, as if it had been pulled out before. Yukong gasped, a look of apprehension on his face. How about we tell her Duan Ling Tian's whereabouts? Perhaps she'll leave our Azure Wolf Castle in a hurry to find Duan Ling Tian. Ningkan suggested. Are you crazy? Meng Li's face changed. Don't forget, she calls Duan Ling Tian brother, and their relationship is clearly not shallow. If she goes to the Blade and Sword sect and finds Duan Ling Tian, and Duan Ling Tian tells her that we sent people to kill him, do you think she'll let us off? At that time, in her rage, our Azure Wolf Castle might cease to exist. Just as the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Tsang Wolf Fort were at a loss, 2 figures appeared high above the inner fort of Tsang Wolf Fort. Oh no, it's that little missy. Luo Fu, the chief of the 5 Vice Fort Masters, was the first to spot the 2 girls, and his face changed drastically. That little missy looks very angry. She wouldn't tear down our Tsang Wolf Fort, would she? Meng Li gasped. What should we do now? Feng Wei smiled bitterly, although he had only seen these 2 girls for the first time 3 days ago. After learning the background of the girl in yellow from his master, he was completely intimidated. What a joke. Could they, Tsang Wolf Fort, afford to provoke someone who could use a martial emperor as a servant? I think we should go and appease her. Otherwise, Tsang Wolf Fort might really be torn down by her. Ning Kan said with a bitter smile. Let's go together. Luo Fu agreed wholeheartedly, then called out to the other 4, and the 5 of them rose into the air, reaching a spot not far from the 2 girls high above in a moment. Currently, a wave of cold air was sweeping out from the girl in yellow, spreading in all directions. The cold air enveloped the sky and earth, and before long, the entire inner fort of Tsang Wolf Fort seemed to be plunged into winter. So cold. Throughout the inner fort of Tsang Wolf Fort, many elders and disciples flew out. When they saw the 2 girls and the 5 Vice Fort Masters standing opposite each other in the sky, they all stopped at a distance to watch the commotion. So it's this little missy showing her power. I heard the Fort Master even hid because of her. I'm really curious who she is, to make our Tsang Wolf Fort Master so afraid of her. You know, our Fort Master is at the Void Realm Peak, only half a step away from the Martial Emperor realm. It's certain that her identity and background are not simple. Not only is her identity and background not simple, her strength is clearly not simple either. The elders and disciples of Tsang Wolf Fort discussed animatedly. Their faces were filled with helpless, bitter smiles. Their Tsang Wolf Fort was, after all, one of the 4 major forces in the southern region of the northern desert. And even when facing the Blade and Sword sect, Cloud Sky Temple, and Emotion-Severing sect, which were also among the 4 major forces, they showed no fear. But now, they had bowed their heads before a 15 or 16-year-old girl. Moreover, their strongest fort master of Tsang Wolf Fort, upon hearing of the girl's arrival, had deliberately hidden and refused to see anyone, treating the girl as a terrifying monster. High in the sky, the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Tsang Wolf Fort faced the girl in yellow with apprehension and unease. Miss Xuanai, Luo Fu, the leader, forced himself to greet her. Miss Xuanai, Miss Xuanai. The other 4, Ning Kan, also squeezed out smiles and greeted her with difficulty. I've waited for 3 days, and that big dog from your Tsang Dog Fort still hasn't come out. Han Xuanai looked at Luo Fu and the other 4, her pretty face radiating coldness, and said in a clear, cold voice, if he doesn't come out today, I'll freeze all 5 of you little dogs into popsicles. Freeze into popsicles? As soon as Han Xuanai said this, Luo Fu and the other 4 smiled bitterly. But they didn't take it seriously. Although the girl had comprehended the ice intent and possessed considerable strength, in their opinion, she shouldn't be able to do anything to them. Miss Xuanai, our fort master really went on a long journey, Luo Fu said with a bitter smile. Yes, Ning Kan and the other 4 nodded in agreement. Whether he went on a long journey or not, we'll know soon. As soon as Han Xuanai finished speaking, she took a step forward, and in an instant, the cold aura that had been accumulating within her body swept out. The bone-chilling cold swept across the sky, causing the air currents to condense before the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Tsang Wolf Fort could react. The extremely cold air had already enveloped them. The terrifying cold air, like a flood of monstrous beasts, fiercely crashed into them. Soon, Feng Wei's face changed, because he found that after the cold air enveloped him, his body began to stiffen. The next moment, the cold air, like a maggot in the bone, pierced through every pore of his body, rushed into his meridians, and froze his meridians and vital energy. Not only that, his flesh, bones, and internal organs were also frozen. and no matter how he tried to activate his vital energy, he couldn't suppress the bone-chilling cold. Not good. At this moment, Feng Wei's face changed. He realized a terrifying problem. All 5 of their vice fort masters had underestimated this little girl. Originally, they feared this little girl because of the powerful force behind her, not her own strength. But now, he found that this little girl's strength was even above his. In just an instant, she froze him, a dignified void transformation realm 7th level expert, into an ice sculpture. What kind of strength was that? Feeling the chill emanating from his entire body, and the vital energy that he couldn't use at all, Feng Wei's heart was filled with bitterness. He also found that with his current physical condition, the little girl, whose strength he had once considered insignificant, had actually shown mercy. Otherwise, he would have been frozen to death long ago. Feng Wei stood in midair, transformed into an ice sculpture. His vital energy completely extinguished. The reason he didn't fall was because an invisible force was supporting him, preventing him from plummeting and shattering. Asterisk at the same time. Ning Kan and Yukong, 2 void transformation realm 8th level experts, successively transformed into ice sculptures. Through the ice sculptures, their extremely grim expressions could be seen. Like Feng Wei, they had not expected Han Xuan'ai to possess such terrifying strength, capable of subduing them in a single encounter. When their barely movable eyes saw Luo Fu and Meng Li, who were in front of them, also turn into ice sculptures, they finally lost all their temper. Even the 2 void transformation realm 9th level vice fort masters of their Tsang Wolf fort had not been spared, let alone them. 5 ice sculptures stood in midair, and if not for an invisible force supporting them, they would have long since fallen and shattered into pieces, leaving no trace of their bodies. The 5 people sealed within the 5 ice sculptures were filled with fear, for they all realized their current dangerous predicament. With just a thought from the girl in yellow, they would undoubtedly die. Fort Master, come out quickly. Fort Master, save us. Asterisk now. Only this thought remained in their hearts, because their vital energy was completely frozen. They were currently unable to use vital energy to send a sound transmission to beg the girl in front of them for mercy. Otherwise, they would have certainly cast aside all dignity and pleaded for mercy with sorrowful cries. Big Dog, Han Xuan'ai, who controlled the life and death of the 5 vice fort masters of Tsang Wolf Fort, suddenly spoke, her voice infused with vital energy, spreading throughout the entire inner fort of Tsang Wolf Fort, penetrating every corner. 5 breaths. If you don't come out within 5 breaths, I'll smash all 5 of your Tsang Dog Fort's little dogs. Han Xuan'ai's voice resounded through the air, clearly reaching everyone in the inner fort, filled with unquestionable authority. Whoosh. The entire inner fort erupted in an uproar. Who on earth is she? She single-handedly froze the 5 vice fort masters of our Tsang Wolf Fort into ice sculptures. Is the ice intent from the legends really that terrifying? When did our Tsang Wolf Fort become Tsang Dog Fort? The fort master is a big dog. The 5 vice fort masters are little dogs. So what are we? Perhaps, in her eyes, we are just a bunch of little puppies. Asterisk the elders and disciples of Tsang Wolf Fort all looked at the girl in yellow high in the sky with bitter smiles this moment. In their eyes, the girl in yellow was simply an unprovocable little devil. Whoever provoked her would be unlucky. Old Gui, who exactly is she? At only 15 or 16 years old, she possesses such terrifying strength. Could she be a demon? In a corner of the inner fort, Zishang stood there, gazing at the girl in yellow high in the sky, asking with a wary expression. She is not a demon. In Zishang's mind, a series of eerie and hoarse voices echoed. He, like you, is human, what? Zishang's pupils constricted, and he couldn't help but gasp. Old Gui, are you kidding me? How old is she? How can a human possess such terrifying power at this age? Her strength, I'm afraid, is not inferior to that of the Tsang Wolf Fort Master, who is like a divine dragon with its head hidden and tail unseen, right? Zishang asked. Unless that Tsang Wolf Fort Master is one of your Martial Emperor realm here, perhaps he could contend with her. Otherwise, he can't be her opponent. Old Gui's voice continued. Also, when she made her move, I felt a familiar aura. If she really cultivated that set of cultivation methods, Then the power behind her. Towards the end, old Gui's voice trembled, as if he had recalled something terrifying. What happened to the power behind her? Hearing the fear in old Gui's tone, Zishang couldn't help but feel curious. He really wanted to know what kind of power made old Gui so afraid. Very strong. So strong you can't imagine. Old Gui's voice became incredibly serious, and he said word by word, "No matter what happens in the future, you must not provoke this little missy. Even at my peak, in the eyes of the weakest people in the power she belongs to, I was just an ant-like existence." What? Old Gui's words completely terrified Zishang. Even old Gui, at his peak, was just an ant-like existence in the eyes of the weakest people in the power that the girl in yellow belonged to? How powerful must that force be? In the past, he had heard old Gui boast countless times about how powerful he was at his peak. Now, for the first time, he realized that old Gui also had moments of fear. Who on earth is she? Zishang looked at the girl in the sky, his eyes filled with eagerness. If I could get involved with her, wouldn't I soar to great heights? There are still 2 breaths of time. It seems you, big dog, don't care about the lives of these 5 little dogs. Han Xuanai spoke again, and at the same time, her external, invisible power showed signs of retracting. "Miss Xuanai, please show mercy." Just then, an old voice, full of helplessness, sounded out of thin air, asterisk at the same time. An aged figure appeared in the sky. This was an old man in green robes, with gray hair and white eyebrows. His face looked somewhat fierce and grim, and he had a short goatee on his chin. Looking at the young girl in yellow not far away, a genuine fear appeared in the old man's eyes, and he instinctively reached out to protect the goatee on his chin. He would never forget what happened a few years ago. His beard, which he had grown for many years, was plucked out hair by the girl in front of him. That heart-wrenching pain was an indelible shadow in his life. "Big dog, you finally came out. I knew it couldn't be such a coincidence that you left on a long journey the moment I arrived. It seems I was right. You were deliberately avoiding me." After the old man in green appeared, Han Xuanai's eyes lit up, as if she had seen something rare and interesting. "Miss Xuanai, it's been a few years, and you haven't changed at all." The old man in green smiled bitterly, while also marveling at the girl's appearance, which had not changed at all over the years. He remembered that when he first met the girl, she looked exactly as she did now. Several years had passed, yet the girl still hadn't grown up. However, the girl's innocent and harmless smile, in his eyes, was no different from a devil's. He knew that she was a little devil, a thorough little devil. Her appearance was merely a facade to deceive people. "Big dog, don't change the subject. Tell me, why were you hiding from me? If you don't explain yourself clearly today, I'll turn these 5 little dogs into ice sculpture fragments." Han Xuanai glared at the old man in green and said, the old man in green was none other than the elusive fort master of Azure Wolf Fort. Azure Wolf, an existence who had reached the peak of the Void Stage. The Void Stage is divided into 4 major realms: Glimpse of Void, Entry into Void, Insight into Void, and Transformation into Void. The highest level is the 9th level of the Transformation into Void Stage. However, even among martial artists at the 9th level of the Transformation into Void Stage, their strength varies. For example, Feng Wei's master, Luo Fu, the head of Azure Wolf Fort's 5 vice fort masters, was stronger than another 9th level transformation into Void Stage vice fort master, Meng Li. If the two were to truly fight, Luo Fu could defeat Meng Li within 10 moves. Ultimately, this was because the strongest concept Meng Li had comprehended was only the 8th level transformation into Void concept, and his other concepts were at most insight into Void concepts. Luo Fu, on the other hand, had not only comprehended one 9th level transformation into Void concept, but also another lower level transformation into Void concept. The difference between the two was like a chasm. However, in front of Azure Wolf, the fort master of Azure Wolf Fort, Luo Fu couldn't even withstand a single move. This was because Azure Wolf was a 9th level transformation into Void Stage expert who had comprehended 2 9th level transformation into Void concepts. Such 9th level transformation into Void Stage experts are also known as peak of the Void Stage experts. They were only half a Step away from entering the Martial Emperor stage and becoming Martial Emperor experts.it is well known that martial artists on the Cloud Heaven continent begin to encounter concepts upon entering the Void stage. Momentum at the glimpse of Void stage. Low-level concepts at the entry into Void stage. Mid-level concepts at the insight into Void stage. And high-level concepts at the transformation into Void stage. However, for a 9th-level transformation into Void stage expert to break through to the Martial Emperor stage, they must first comprehend profundities. Only 9th-level transformation into Void stage experts who have comprehended profundities can achieve the status of a Martial Emperor expert. And to comprehend profundities, the prerequisite is to first comprehend at least 2 9th-level high-level concepts, which are 2 9th-level transformation into Void concepts. If one cannot even achieve this, it is impossible to comprehend profundities. For example, if a 9th-level transformation into Void stage expert has comprehended the 9th-level high-level fire concept and wants to further comprehend the profundity of fire, they must apply pressure to it. And what can apply pressure to it are only other concepts that are also 9th-level high-level concepts. And even then, success is not guaranteed.it as well. Known that water and fire are opposing elements. If a 9th-level transformation into Void stage martial artist who has comprehended the 9th-level high-level fire concept can also comprehend the 9th-level high-level water concept, they are almost certain to successfully break through to the Martial Emperor stage and become a Martial Emperor expert. However, due to the opposing nature of water and fire, it is almost impossible for a single person to comprehend both of these concepts to the 9th-level high-level unless they have some extraordinary encounter. And if a 9th-level transformation into Void stage expert who has comprehended the 9th-level high-level fire concept does not comprehend the 9th-level high-level water concept, but instead comprehends another 9th-level high-level concept, the effect is greatly reduced. On the Cloud Heaven continent, there are many martial artists who have simultaneously comprehended 2 9th-level high-level concepts. Yet throughout their lives, they are unable to take that final step and become Martial Emperor experts. Among peak of the Void stage experts, there are also differences in strength. On the Cloud Heaven continent, there are also some peak of the Void stage experts who have comprehended 3 or more 9th-level high-level concepts. The probability of these peak of the Void stage experts breaking through to the Martial Emperor stage is much greater than that of peak of the Void stage experts who have only comprehended 2 9th-level high-level concepts. In short, to become a Martial Emperor expert, one must at least simultaneously comprehend 2 9th-level high-level concepts, as this is the minimum threshold. Miss Xuan, I've been in seclusion recently. Before going into seclusion, I had warned them that if anyone came looking for me, they should say I had gone on a long journey. So, I wasn't intentionally hiding from you. Miss Xuan. Facing Han Xuan's aggressive demeanor, Azure Wolf smiled bitterly, not daring to admit that he had deliberately hidden. Hearing Azure Wolf's words, Han Xuan's expression softened a bit. Miss Xuan, since I'm out now, please forgive them and let bygones be bygones. In front of Han Xuan, Azure Wolf bowed his head. Han Xuan huffed softly, and with a raise of her hand, the invisible force supporting the 5 human ice sculptures dissipated at the same time. The icy power on the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Azure Wolf Fort was also withdrawn by her. The ice on their bodies and within them disappeared, and their frozen origin energy returned to normal. After falling for a while, the 5 men finally mobilized their origin energy to stabilize themselves to at this moment. Their gazes towards Han Xuan were filled with terror, as if they were looking at a monstrous beast. This girl, who seemed to be only 15 or 16 years old, was no less powerful than their fort master. Asterisk. I really didn't expect that after just a few years, Miss Xuan, you've not only comprehended the 9th-level high-level ice concept, but also the 9th-level high-level wind concept. Moreover, Miss Xuan, you can already skillfully merge the 2 concepts together. You're probably only a stone's throw away from the Martial Emperor stage, aren't you? Azure Wolf gasped, then couldn't help but ask that a few years ago, when he first met the girl, Her strength was negligible in front of him. He was wary of the girl because of the expert by her side. Today, seeing the girl for the second time, he vaguely realized a problem. The girl's strength was already above his, and she was closer to the Martial Emperor stage than he was today. Feeling that it wouldn't be long before the girl successfully broke through to the Martial Emperor stage and became a Martial Emperor expert. Big dog, you have good eyesight. Speaking of which, it's been several years since I last rode you. The main reason I came to find you this time is to have you be my mount for a while and take Shui Yi and me around to look for my brother Ling Tian. Han Xuanai narrowed her eyes and slowly said to Azure Wolf, Azure. Wolf's face instantly changed upon hearing this, and the other 5 vice fort masters of Azure Wolf Fort were now completely dumbfounded. The request this little grandaunt made was too excessive, wasn't it? To make their fort master her mount? Their fort master of Azure Wolf Fort was a powerful demon. They knew that, but even they had only heard that the fort master's true form was an Azure Wolf demon, and had never seen what his true form actually looked like. Miss Xuanai, how about I arrange another demon to be your mount? How about a 9th level transformation into Void Stage 1? Its speed is not much less than mine. Azure Wolf said with a bitter smile. No, I want you. Big dog, I'm telling you, you're becoming more and more disobedient. Do I have to call out Azure Slave for you to listen to me? Han Xuanai frowned, saying with some displeasure, Azure Slave. Hearing Han Xuanai's words, Azure Wolf's face changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, Miss Xuanai, there's no need to trouble old ancestor with such a small matter. For you to consider little Azure worthy of being your mount, it is little Azure's honor. It is little Azure's honor. After speaking, Azure Wolf glanced at the 5 dumbfounded Vice Fort Masters, then at the group of Azure Wolf Fort elders and disciples standing in midair below, a look of difficulty on his face. Miss Xuanai, you see, I am, after all, the Fort Master of Azure Wolf Fort. How about we go somewhere else? To make him the dignified Fort Master of Azure Wolf Fort, transform into his true form, and act as a mount for 2 young girls in front of so many people. He really couldn't bring himself to do it. The scene before them completely petrified the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Azure Wolf Fort. They had heard it. Their revered Fort Master of Azure Wolf Fort had clearly agreed to this little grandaunt's request to temporarily act as her mount. Old ancestor? Most importantly, they had heard some clues from the Fort Master's words just now. Master, do you know who this Azure Slave that this little grandaunt mentioned is? Why does the Fort Master refer to him as Old Ancestor? Feng Wei couldn't help but ask Luo Fu through sound transmission with his origin energy. I remember, a few years ago, the expert who was suspected to be above the Martial Emperor stage and followed this little grandaunt was called Azure Slave by her. Luo Fu replied via sound transmission. However, I never expected that there was such a relationship between that expert and our Fort Master. Humph. I don't have time to go to other places with you. I'm in a hurry to find my brother Ling Tian. Hurry up, Han Xuanai snorted, urging him at this moment. The Azure Wolf Fort elders and disciples below were too far away to hear the conversation between Han Xuanai and their Fort Master. Otherwise, their jaws would surely drop. The Azure Wolf, the Fortress Master of Kangwolf Fortress, who was urged by Han Xuanai, had a helpless, bitter smile on his fierce and ferocious face. Taking a deep breath, the Azure Wolf raised his hand and pressed it down. In an instant. Whoosh! A vast flame erupted from his palm, sweeping across the sky above the inner fortress in a blink of an eye, forming a fiery red barrier. This fiery red barrier, like a burning cloud, obscured the vision of the elders and disciples of Kangwolf Fortress who were standing at a lower altitude, preventing them from seeing what was happening in the high sky. This moment, the Azure Wolf couldn't help but marvel at his cleverness under the dumbfounded gazes of the 5 Vice Fortress Masters of Kangwolf Fortress. The old man in blue expanded, and strands of azure fur grew on his body. In a moment, his blue clothes were torn, and the old man in blue was no more. In his place was a demonic wolf covered in azure fur. The demonic wolf's size remained that of a normal warhorse. When the azure-furred Kangwolf appeared, the 5 Vice Fortress Masters of Kangwolf Fortress couldn't help but look at the badges on their chests. The Kangwolf head on the badges was exactly the same as the head of their Kangwolf Fortress Master's true form. It seems. The identity badges of our Kangwolf Fortress were designed by the Fortress Master using his own true form's head as a prototype. For a moment, the 5 Vice Fortress Masters of Kangwolf Fortress thought to themselves, the demonic wolf, covered in azure fur, stood in midair. On its forehead, there was a faint crescent-shaped mark, entirely green, a green moon mark. Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf? Mu Shuei, who had been standing quietly beside Han Xuanai, couldn't help but exclaim when she saw the azure wolf's true form. The Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf is a powerful demonic beast. A Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with a purple moon mark on its forehead is an even nobler sacred beast within the Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf clan. Talent is divided into 7 levels, which can be discerned by the color of the crescent-shaped mark on their true form's forehead. The 7 levels of talent correspond to the 7 colors of the rainbow. The 7 colors of the rainbow are red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. A Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with a red moon mark on its forehead has the lowest talent within the Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf clan. After reaching adulthood, they can at most barely break through to the void-prying realm. A Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with an orange moon mark has slightly higher talent. After reaching adulthood, as long as they work hard, cultivating to the 9th level of the void-prying realm is not a problem. A Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with a yellow moon mark has even higher talent than the previous ones. They can generally cultivate smoothly and break through to the void transformation realm. As for a Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with a green moon mark, like this azure wolf, the Fortress Master of Kangwolf Fortress, they can generally break through to the 9th level of the void transformation realm when cultivating to the extreme. However, breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm is extremely difficult, unless they encounter some fortuitous opportunity. Following these are Howling Moon Heavenly Wolves with cyan moon marks, blue moon marks, and purple moon marks among them. A Howling Moon Heavenly Wolf with a purple moon mark is a true sacred beast. That as for Howling Moon Heavenly Wolves with cyan moon marks and blue moon marks, they can be considered descendants of sacred beasts, and their talent is also exceptionally impressive. Whoosh! Seeing the azure wolf transform into its true form, Han Xuanai, light as a wisp of willow, landed steadily on its back and straddled it. Shuei, come. Immediately after, Han Xuanai called out to Mu Shuei, and the 2 girls sat on the azure wolf's back together. Big dog, go. Han Xuanai called out sweetly, urging the azure wolf to fly out, disappearing from the sight of the 5 Vice Fortress Masters of Kangwolf Fortress in a blink of an eye. Regarding the matter of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, I'll leave it to you all. As long as I can obtain a shard of fire profound truth, or a shard of thunder profound truth, I will be able to step into the Emperor realm in one fell swoop. At the same time, the azure wolf's voice, condensed with vital energy, clearly reached the ears of Luo Fu and the other 4, causing the 5 of them to nod in a hurry. The Emperor realm is a collective term for the Martial Emperor realm and the Demon Emperor realm. Human martial artists who enter the Emperor realm are Martial Emperor. Powerhouses, demonic beasts who enter the Emperor realm are Demon Emperor powerhouses. The azure wolf is a demon transformed from a demonic beast. One more step, and it will be the Demon Emperor realm. As long as our people can obtain the profound truth shards that the Fortress Master needs from the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, the Fortress Master will become a Demon Emperor powerhouse. At that time, our Kangwolf Fortress will rise to another level and become a second-rate force in the outer domain. The 5 Vice Fortress Masters of Kangwolf Fortress looked at each other, and they could all see excitement in each other's eyes. Oh, right. Suddenly, Ningkin remembered something and said with some trepidation, "We haven't had time to tell the Fortress Master about that Duan Ling Tian. How should we treat him in the future? That Duan Ling Tian clearly has an extraordinary relationship with Miss Xuanai. Even that sacred artifact in his hand might have been given to him by Miss Xuanai." Meng Li's eyes flickered with apprehension. If he had known about Duan Ling Tian's relationship with Han Xuanai earlier, he would never have led people to pursue Duan Ling Tian last time. Intending to snatch whatever sacred artifact, was in Duan Ling Tian's hand. Don't provoke that Duan Ling Tian in the future. Luo Fu, the head of the 5 vice fortress masters of Kangwolf Fortress, had a hint of apprehension in his eyes. You've all seen how powerful Miss Xuanai is. Even the fortress master might not be her match. Moreover, she has a mysterious and powerful force behind her, and even the fortress master's ancestor is her servant. She is not someone our Kangwolf Fortress can afford to offend. Exactly. Yukong nodded in agreement. I really didn't expect that Duan Ling Tian could be related to that little madam. Feng Wei took a deep breath. Although he was unwilling, he also knew that he couldn't afford to offend Han Xuanai, so he could only let out a frustrated snort. Ning Can, since your direct disciple shared the news about Duan Ling Tian having a sacred artifact with you, he must have an irreconcilable hatred with Duan Ling Tian. If possible, you should advise him not to oppose Duan Ling Tian anymore, lest he drag our Kangwolf Fortress into trouble. Meng Li looked at Ning Can and said, Understood. Ning Can nodded. No, don't tell Zishang about this yet. Luo Fu shook his head, successfully attracting the gazes of the other 4 vice fortress masters, and then continued, Right now, we don't know the exact nature of the hatred between Zishang and Duan Ling Tian. If it truly is irreconcilable, junior brother Ning, if you make him abandon his hatred, he might resent us, or even betray our Kangwolf Fortress. The Martial Emperor's hidden treasure is about to open, and Zishang is a key player for our Kangwolf Fortress. We cannot afford any mishaps. By the end, Luo Fu's face was extremely serious. Master is right. Let Zishang resolve the hatred between him and Duan Ling Tian himself. Even if he really does something to Duan Ling Tian in the end, if Miss Xuanai comes knocking, it won't be too late to expel him from Kangwolf Fortress. Feng Wei agreed. Meng Li, Ning Can, and Yukong also agreed with Luo Fu's suggestion. However, Zishang, the person involved, was currently kept in the dark. Looking at the burning cloud gradually dissipating in the sky and the 5 figures, he frowned. The fortress master and those 2 young girls are gone, Zishang said in surprise. When Zishang saw the 5 vice fortress masters in the sky disperse one after another, he took a deep breath, rose into the air, and met Ning Can, bowing respectfully. Master, is something wrong? Ning Can smiled as he looked at Zishang. He was quite satisfied with this direct disciple. Master, I wonder who that yellow-clad girl is. Zishang asked with a look of longing. Hearing Zishang mention Han Xuanai, the smile on Ning Can's face completely froze. Then, with a look of apprehension, he said, I'm not entirely sure who she is. I only know that everyone calls her Miss Xuanai. However, her background seems very terrifying. Not something our Kangwolf Fortress can afford to provoke. Remember this. No matter where you encounter her in the future, you must remain respectful and not lose your manners. By the end, Ning Can's expression was incredibly solemn. Understood. Zishang nodded, his eyes sparkling, and an evil thought arose in his mind. If I can conquer her and gain the support of the force behind her, won't I be able to walk around as I please in the future? It must be said that Zishang's dream was beautiful, but whether it could be realized was another matter entirely, as the saying goes. Dreams are beautiful, but reality is cruel. And this saying is not without basis. Time flowed silently in a flash. Nearly 10 days passed, ending city in the spacious mansion. The stronghold of the 5 elements sects would peak, that in the innermost training ground, a graceful figure was constantly moving. Her actions elegant, like a colorful butterfly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Each time the sword in the graceful figure's hand swept out, it formed a sword flower, appearing extremely dazzling at some point. The ancient mammoth phantom above the girl's head had changed. Dozens of ancient mammoth phantoms appeared out of thin air, yet they were extremely unstable. Seed of momentum? Duan Ling Tian, who was standing at the edge of the training ground, his eyes suddenly lit up, somewhat surprised. Whoosh. The graceful figure in the training ground executed dozens more sword strikes before stopping, sheathing her sword, and then came to Duan Ling Tian's side. Big brother Duan. When I was practicing my sword skills just now, I seemed to have a different feeling, and the power seemed to be greater. What was that about? The girl who came to Duan Ling Tian's side was Yi Xian, the young mistress of the Yi family in Flowing Cloud Town. Silly girl, that's the seed of momentum. To be precise, it's the seed of sword momentum. With this seed of sword momentum, once you enter the void-prying realm in the future, you will quickly comprehend true sword momentum. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. That's sword momentum. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. As the young mistress of the Yi family in Flowing Cloud Town, she naturally knew what momentum was, but she hadn't expected to comprehend it so quickly. I can help you improve your innate talent, but I cannot help you with your comprehension. I was worried earlier. Now it seems I worried for nothing. Your comprehension has exceeded my imagination. Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. Duan Ling Tian. Suddenly, a loud voice came from afar, causing Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian to look over together. Shen Wei. With just one glance, Duan Ling Tian spotted Shen Wei and Ke Zhong. Beside them was a burly young man, nearly 2 meters tall, in his early 30s, with a rough-hewn appearance and piercing, bright eyes. You are Duan Ling Tian? As the three approached Duan Ling Tian and Yi Xian, the burly young man's gaze locked onto Duan Ling Tian, his eyes filled with intense fighting spirit. I heard you defeated Shen Wei in one move. That's right. After greeting Ke Zhong, Duan Ling Tian met the burly young man's gaze and nodded. I can also defeat Shen Wei in one move. Come, fight me. As soon as the burly young man finished speaking, he transformed into a flash of lightning, reaching the center of the training ground in an instant. His sturdy body showed no signs of clumsiness or being cumbersome. Duan Ling Tian was, admittedly, startled by the burly young man's words that he knew Shen Wei's strength, 4th level of the void prying stage. He had comprehended the triple-level mid-grade fire concept. Could this burly young man, who looked to be in his early 30s, also defeat Shen Wei in one move? At first, Duan Ling Tian didn't investigate the burly young man's cultivation. Instead, he looked at Shen Wei, a hint of curiosity in his eyes, wondering if what the burly young man said was true. Shen Wei forced a smile and nodded, finally managing to utter, "You two are both monsters." Monsters? Duan Ling Tian's eyes flickered, a little surprised he was already used to being called a monster now. Shen Wei was also calling that burly young man a monster, which suggested the other party indeed possessed some strength. Duan Ling Tian. You're not afraid to fight me, are you? Standing in the center of the training ground, after waiting for Duan Ling Tian for a while, the burly young man snorted, his tone full of disdain. Big guy, what are you saying? How could my big brother Duan be afraid of you? Before Duan Ling Tian could speak, Yi Xian couldn't stand it anymore. She admired Duan Ling Tian the most, and naturally couldn't tolerate anyone mocking her idol. Go on, Duan Ling Tian. Shen Wei smiled at Duan Ling Tian, then transmitted his voice with elemental energy. I only told him that you defeated me in one move. I didn't tell him that you took on 8 bandits by yourself, and that the strongest ones were 3 at the 6th level of the void prying stage. Towards the end, Shen Wei had a mischievous grin, as if he was maliciously retaliating. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. Did Shen Wei think he would need to use his soul skill, 1,000 illusions, to deal with that burly young man? Ke Zhong remained silent, standing aside, waiting to watch the show, although he hadn't known Duan Ling Tian for long. Based on his understanding of him, Duan Ling Tian would definitely not refuse the burly young man's challenge. Facts proved Ke Zhong right. Whoosh. Duan Ling Tian moved like a gust of wind, instantly appearing opposite the burly young man, confronting him. What do I call you? If you want to know my name, you can defeat me first. The burly young man stared intently at Duan Ling Tian, his voice booming like thunder. Oh? Interesting. Duan Ling Tian smiled. Hey, big guy, don't cry if you lose to my big brother Duan, okay? Yi Xian shouted with a laugh from the side, seemingly wanting to stir up trouble. Me? Lose to him? Hearing Yi Xian's words, the burly young man became enraged and roared. Little girl, open your eyes and watch carefully. Watch how I, Huang Dinyo, defeat him. So your name is Huang Dinyo? Yi Xian playfully stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, what a rustic name, much worse than my big brother Duan's name. You. Huang Denyo only then realized he had inadvertently let slip his name, and immediately felt a bit ashamed and annoyed. However, he naturally wouldn't vent his anger on an innocent little girl like Yixian. He stared at Duan Ling Tian and said in a deep voice, "Duan Ling Tian, today I'll let that little girl know. A good-sounding name doesn't mean anything." Duan Ling Tian was speechless upon hearing Huang Denyo's words. This Huang Denyo's temper was truly no different from a child's. "Please." Duan Ling Tian looked at Huang Denyo, smiling faintly, indicating that he was ready. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Huang Denyo didn't waste any time. He stomped his feet, and two streams of earthy yellow power surged from beneath him, propelling him directly towards Duan Ling Tian. The earthy yellow power was the fusion of elemental energy and earth concept, transforming into tangible earth force above the void. The power of heaven and earth surged, eventually converging into the phantoms of 160 ancient horned dragons, rushing towards Duan Ling Tian along with Huang Denyo. With fierce momentum, when Duan Ling Tian saw the phantoms of these 160 ancient horned dragons, his expression had already changed. He never expected Huang Denyo's strength to be so formidable. It completely exceeded his imagination. Huang Denyo's speed was so fast that Duan Ling Tian's naked eye couldn't keep up. He hastily used his spiritual energy to pierce into this soul mark deep within his soul, unleashing his soul skill point, Thousand Illusions. As a faint glow flickered deep within Duan Ling Tian's eyes, an illusionary space appeared out of thin air, enveloping him as its center and covering almost half of the training ground. Huang Denyo was right within its range. Huang Denyo was almost upon Duan Ling Tian, his raised fist practically ready to strike. But in the next moment, his figure suddenly paused. Immediately after, Huang Denyo turned and charged to the side, unleashing a powerful punch with fierce momentum. Vast earthy yellow power surged out, creating bursts of ear-piercing air explosions. The air currents were compressed and displaced, spreading out to form gusts of biting wind. Fifth level of the void prying stage. With all his elemental energy unleashed, comparable to the power of 70 ancient horned dragons. The fivefold mid-grade earth concept is comparable to the power of 60 ancient horned dragons. Plus, since he's fighting on the ground, the earth force he can borrow is half of the fivefold earth concept power, comparable to 30 ancient horned dragons. On the ground, even without a spirit weapon, he can unleash power comparable to 160 ancient horned dragons. Even a fifth-level void-prying stage martial artist who has similarly comprehended another fivefold mid-grade concept might not be able to withstand a single blow from him. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath. He too was shocked by Huang Denyo's strength. With Huang Denyo's strength, even among the contemporary young generation of the entire five-element sect, he would likely be among the top ranks that if Duan Ling Tian hadn't used his soul skill Thousand Illusions, he truly wouldn't have been his match. Boom, 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 boom. Each punch Huang Denyo threw sent out a vast surge of earthy yellow power, like furious, roaring earth dragons. Unfortunately, every one of his attacks missed. Illusion. At some point, a surprised voice came. Immediately after, an elderly figure appeared outside the training ground, a one-armed old man. None other than Elder Yang Ling of Wood Peak, senior brother. Kuzheng respectfully looked at Yang Ling, martial uncle. Xin Wei bowed respectfully. "You two already knew?" Yang Ling's eyes flashed as he looked at Kuzheng and Xin Wei. After glancing at Duan Ling Tian, who stood calmly in the training ground, he could tell that Kuzheng and Xin Wei seemed completely unsurprised by the scene before them, clearly having known about it beforehand. "Senior brother." Kuzheng nodded, then said, "That is the illusion constructed by Duan Ling Tian's innate divine ability." Innate divine ability? Yang Ling was startled at first, then seemed to recall something. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his breathing became somewhat rapid. "You mean, he's an anomaly?" Yang Ling had heard a bit about anomalies, knowing them to be uniquely blessed individuals possessing one-of-a-kind innate divine abilities. "Yes." Kuzheng nodded. "Huh. Good. Kuzheng, I didn't expect you to find two such outstanding young disciples on this trip. With their addition, Wood Peak is sure to rank second in this Five Peaks battle. Yang Ling laughed heartily, seemingly very excited. The reason he said second was because Yang Ling knew that even if Duan Ling Tian and Huang Dinyo were strong, they were still no match for the outstanding disciples of Gold Peak. Gold Peak, the first peak of the five-element sect, its status unchanging through the ages. Moreover, with their strength, they will definitely be able to secure the greatest benefits for our Wood Peak in that place. If we can obtain what the Peak Master needs, the Peak Master will become the first martial emperor in the history of our five-element sect. Yang Ling's eyes gleamed, as if he could already see Wood Peak rising again within the five-element sect. Martial uncle, why haven't I seen those two guys? Shenwei looked around and asked, a little curious. Them? I've already killed them. Yang Ling said indifferently. Both Kejung and Shenwei were startled. They were spies from Earth Peak, planted by Tang Lin in our Wood Peak. A few days ago, they even tried to recruit Duan Ling Tian to Earth Peak, even promising a second-grade spirit weapon and sevenfold concept fragment. Yang Ling's eyes flickered with cold light as he explained, What? Upon hearing Yang Ling's words, Kejung and Shenwei were shocked. Spies? I never expected that I, too, misjudged. However, that Tang Lin is truly too much. Not only did he plant spies on our side, but he also tried to poach our Wood Peak disciples. Kejung's face was extremely gloomy, his eyes flickering with a cold, predatory glint. They've done this before. But Duan Ling Tian is truly remarkable. If it were me, I might even have been tempted by that second-grade spirit weapon and sevenfold concept fragment, but he wasn't. Towards the end, Yang Ling's face showed a smile. Second-grade spirit weapon, sevenfold concept fragment. Our Wood Peak will definitely not treat him unfairly. Kejung looked at Duan Ling Tian, the cold light in his eyes gradually disappearing, replaced by relief. Originally, I was already pleasantly surprised that you brought Duan Ling Tian to Wood Peak, but I didn't expect you to bring another young powerhouse. This Huang Dinyo is quite strong. When I was his age, I wasn't as good as him. Looking at Huang Dinyo, who was constantly moving and attacking the air in the training ground, Yang Ling's smile grew wider.